Have you ever been confronted by law enforcement over something as simple as your right to stay silent? What happens when a citizen knows their rights, but the officers don't? In today's video, we're diving into an intense First Amendment audit where one guy takes on some seriously misguided cops. This isn't just any interaction. This is about knowing your rights and standing firm when the law gets misunderstood. It starts when this individual, armed with nothing but his knowledge of the law, finds himself stopped by a couple of officers demanding ID. But here's the twist: he's not breaking any laws, and he refuses to show his ID. The officers, however, don't take too kindly to this, and things start to heat up quickly. Will this guy be able to stay calm under pressure and navigate the situation without giving in? Or will the officers escalate it even further? As the tension rises and the officer's frustration mounts, you're left wondering, who's really in control here? Watch as this guy handles the situation like a pro, but not before things take an unexpected turn. Don't miss what happens next in this gripping First Amendment audit. As the camera rolls, you can see the man's calm but unwavering demeanor as the officers demand answers. "I don't need to show you my ID," he says, his voice steady but firm. The officers, visibly confused and maybe even a little frustrated, try to justify their demands, claiming they suspect him of something, though they can't seem to articulate what that something is. It's clear they're operating on assumption, not actual law. The first officer, a bit on edge, asks him to step aside, but the man refuses to move. He's well aware of his rights, and he's not about to let them walk all over him. The second officer, sensing an opportunity to escalate, starts raising his voice, but the man stands his ground, never breaking eye contact. Every word from the officers seems more desperate, almost as if they're trying to talk him into a mistake. With every passing second, the tension grows thicker. What started as a routine encounter is now a battle of wills. Will the officers back down, or will they try to force a situation where none exists? The man isn't budging, but how much longer can he hold his ground before they make their move? The suspense is almost unbearable. The officers continue their verbal back and forth, growing increasingly frustrated by the man's unyielding stance. The second officer, more aggressive than the first, steps in closer, his voice rising. "You're wasting our time," he snaps, clearly irritated that someone isn't just complying. But the man doesn't flinch. His grip on his phone tightens, knowing that recording every moment is just as important as standing his ground. At this point, it's clear the officers are out of their depth. They're used to people simply folding under pressure, but this guy isn't like most people. With a coolness that makes the situation feel even more intense, he calmly asks the officers if they understand the law about ID refusal. They exchange a look, and it's like a flicker of doubt passes between them. It's obvious they weren't expecting this. But instead of backing down, the tension escalates, and they start making more pointed threats. "We could take you in for obstruction," the first officer mutters, his tone hinting at something darker. But the man isn't shaken. He calmly reminds them of their responsibility to uphold the law, not to impose their own misunderstanding of it. The conflict is growing, not just between him and the officers, but within the officers themselves. One seems to be questioning the situation, the other pushing harder for compliance. How will this clash end? The uncertainty lingers, and you can feel the stakes rising with each passing second. The standoff is getting unbearable. The officers are visibly frustrated, their eyes darting between each other, as if searching for a way out of this escalating situation. They start pacing, trying to come up with a new angle, a new threat, anything to break the man's resolve. "You're being uncooperative," the first officer finally says, but there's a tremble in his voice, as if even he knows it's a weak accusation. The second officer steps closer, this time practically nose to nose with the man, his breath heavy. The tension is thick. One wrong move, and things could spiral out of control. "You're not in charge here," the officer growls. "We could take you in right now if we wanted to." His voice is laced with frustration, but it's also clear that he's trying to intimidate, hoping to get a reaction. But the man doesn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, he calmly asks, "Am I under arrest? Am I being detained?" His words are sharp, precise, leaving no room for the officers to hide behind their vague threats. For a moment, there's a strange stillness. The first two officers exchange uncertain glances, unsure how to explain their stalled confrontation. But the third officer doesn't wait for an answer. Instead, he turns to the man, his voice colder than before. "You think you know the law? You think you can stand there and waste our time without consequences?" The air thickens as this new officer challenges the man directly, his presence adding a fresh layer of intimidation. The first officer starts to speak, but the new arrival cuts him off. "Get back to the car," he snaps, clearly taking charge now. The second officer hesitates, but under the weight of the new officer's command, he retreats. Now the man is alone in front of the most aggressive officer yet. The stakes have never been higher. With the tension at its peak, you can almost hear the clock ticking. Something's about to break. The question is, will it be the officers or will it be the man standing his ground? The young officer steps closer, his chest puffed out with a sense of superiority. But the man stands his ground, unwavering. There's a brief moment where it feels like the standoff is about to reach its boiling point, and the whole situation could erupt in an instant. The officer's hands twitch as if he's ready to make a move, but the man doesn't flinch. "Are you detaining me?" The man asks once again, his voice cool, but cutting through the tension like a knife. The officer pauses, his expression flickering with uncertainty. His pride has been challenged, and for a moment, you can see the cracks in his resolve. "No, you're free to go," the officer finally spits out, though his words lack the conviction they had earlier. But just as the man turns to leave, something unexpected happens. The officer's hand shoots out, gripping the man's arm. The crowd that has begun to gather nearby tenses, waiting for the next move. The man jerks his arm away, his voice low but firm. "You don't have the right to touch me." In that moment, the officer hesitates, clearly not expecting the man's quick reaction. But before anything else can happen, a voice rings out from the back of the crowd. They've got no right to do that. Someone yells, and suddenly, the tension snaps. More people begin recording, pulling out their phones, and the officer realizes he's not just up against one determined individual anymore. He's facing a public spectacle that could easily turn against him. The officer releases his grip, his face flushed with frustration, and backs away slowly. The first two officers, witnessing their colleague's failure, finally step back as well. Without a word, the officers begin to retreat, clearly deflated and unwilling to escalate things further. The man watches them go, his calm demeanor never faltering. And as he walks away, he leaves the audience with a shocking twist. Sometimes, standing up for your rights isn't just about legal knowledge. It's about knowing when to walk away, leaving the officers to reflect on their own actions. The final moments capture the officers, now visibly uncomfortable, glancing back at the man who didn't flinch. They've lost this round, but the true question remains, will they ever learn? The man's quiet victory lingers in the air as the scene fades, leaving the audience with one last question. What will happen the next time these officers encounter someone who knows their rights? As the officers retreat, the crowd starts to disperse, murmuring amongst themselves, some still recording, others just in awe of what they've witnessed. The man, calm and collected, walks away from the scene, his confidence never wavering. It's clear that while the officers may have initially been in control, the real power lay in knowing your rights and standing firm in the face of authority. For the audience watching, it's a powerful reminder of the importance of understanding the law, especially when it comes to interactions with law enforcement. The officers may have had the authority in the moment, but it was the man's knowledge of his rights and his refusal to be intimidated that won the day. It's a lesson in how often power is misused, and how crucial it is to stand your ground when the law is on your side. As the video ends, the lingering question is how the officers will approach future situations. Will they take this as a lesson learned, or will they continue to misunderstand the law? Either way, the man has proven a point, and his calm resilience serves as an inspiration for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation. The story ends on a high note, reminding us all that the fight for our rights is far from over, and knowledge can be the strongest weapon of all.